Hello, my name is James. Welcome to Better Man Briefs. Today's topic is going to be the power grid. I'm going to briefly cover the main forms of power production, the different forms of power generation that is, and then how that supplies to the grid, roughly what the grid is doing with that, and then obviously tracing down to you in your house and how that affects you in your house. So, without further ado, let's cover some of the main ones. So, main forms of power production currently in use, we have our coal power plant, because I can show you my little pretty drawings. So you're at the coal power plant. Just takes coal in, burns the coal. The coal, as it burns, obviously generates heat. So it takes the heat energy, using water turning to steam to convert heat energy into mechanical energy by spinning the turbine. The spinning of the turbine, taking the mechanical energy and then converting it into electrical energy using electromagnets around the shaft rotating off the steam turbine. So that way you take the heat, convert it into mechanical, take the mechanical and convert it into electric. Wind turbines do the similar thing. You're just skipping the water step. So it's just the wind spinning the blade. The blade rotates the shaft, which again has electromagnets on it that generates the electricity for the power grid. Then we have our hydroelectric power plant. Similar to the wind, it's just using the water in its liquid form, spins blades that rotates the shaft. So you start to see the general trend that we work with most of our power generation. And then for nuclear, same thing. You got elements that heat up the water. Water gets pushed through steam generators, same deal. So it's converting thermal, mechanical, and then finally to electric is how these ones are all operating. The gas turbine is somewhat similar in that we're burning gas. When it's burned, we're using the vapor to spin the turbine blade, similar to like a jet engine on this one. Same deal, right? Shaft spins electromagnets that generate the electrical energy. Solar does not do that. It's acting more like a battery. So we're knocking electrons loose and they have to run through the wire to come back and complete their little circuit. And then finally we have fusion, not yet a thing. I'm sorry. Little solar panels there was that one. This is giant magnetic fields that holds the plasma state spinning around. That's what I'm depicting there with that little picture for fusion. We've been able to generate some levels of fusion. We just can't get as much energy out as we've put into the system, so it's not yet energy productive. The most common form of fusion that you get to see every day is the big burning ball in the sky. Alright, so that covers our main forms of power generation. When they generate, how they supply the grid is what we're going to talk about now. Let me, back up and quickly talk about your side of it, my side of it. You flip the switch and suddenly you're asking the power grid for power. Power grid then is synced up to all these generators and it pulls power from one of them. When more power is needed, the grid is talking to the generators saying, hey, we need to produce more power. When less power is needed, it's like, hey, don't produce so much power. Thing to note with the power generators is power generation can't just generate electrical energy and have it go nowhere. That's not, unfortunately, how the power grid works. So you can have bleed-offs, burning off the excess energy waste. Otherwise, you'll start blowing things if you're not getting rid of the excess energy. Throughout the day, we have peaks and troughs of energy requirements. The peaks are in the morning and the evening when people are at home. For something like solar, right, its peak power production is in the middle of the day. The stable energy forms, which is your hydro, natural gas, nuclear, and then your coal. These ones all like to be more steady state, particularly nuclear and coal, like a steady flow of energy. They don't like the big spikes as much. Wind produces at random times. Solar produces offset from the time we need it. When you talk about destabilizing the power grid, what that is doing that leads to brownouts or blackouts is you're producing a ton of power midday, right? Let's say for solar is a good example. Midday, you're producing a ton of power and there's not as much ask on the grid. What does the grid do for the rest of the power generation forms? Like nuclear and coal, it says, hey, produce less. They already produce less, right? Because midday, we don't use as much. Now solar's coming online midday, so it's like, hey, produce a lot less. So these get turned way down. Remember, these like to be steady power production. They don't like to fluctuate up and down. So these are now being turned even further down. Now the evening comes, solar doesn't produce, like it falls off as the evening comes because the sun's going down. So that energy form is going away. Energy demand is going up. Suddenly nuclear and coal are being asked to crank way up. And again, they don't like to do that. They like to stay steady. So now you get these high demands on the system. You get these sharper fluctuations from these generators' point of view, and that taxes the grid system a lot more. What makes it even worse is these guys have to pay the cost of generating the power when the power is most expensive is in the evening and morning. But here's the trick. So they are willing to eat the cost to stabilize the grid normally. Now, as solar panels are coming online, not only are they making it harder for these guys to make the profit they normally make, because now they're fluctuating up and down more, so it's increasing the strain and pressure, increasing the maintenance costs on them. Now it's costing them more from that perspective, but then also legally, for a lot of states, they make these companies pay somebody who has solar panels as if the midday energy is worth the most, which it's not. How these guys get the standard rate is what they're able to charge you when they've balanced out the cost throughout a 24-hour cycle. Instead now, though, throughout the 24-hour cycle, as we've already established, midday isn't exactly the prime rate, but you're having to pay somebody who has solar panels prime rate at the same time that those same solar panels they've hooked up to the grid is now increasing your operating costs. We're increasing the pressure on these traditional energy forms and charging them more money for doing it. So it's really putting our grid in a very bad spot. Now, ways around this is to do things like Tesla battery packs, anything that is going to help offset when peak demand is versus energy use. That's what you'd want to pair if you really wanted to actually benefit the grid, not just put up solar panels, yay, helping out the grid. You're actually not. You're not helping out the grid at all. That's though, when people are talking about destabilizing the grid, that's kind of how that affects it. If you're not able to burn off the power, then you're going to trip breakers to protect other elements of the grid. That's when you get a rolling brownout or rolling blackout. So like, let's say now suddenly this guy's asked to produce a lot of power and he's not spooled up for it. To protect this piece of equipment, they just kill it off the grid. Now what power it was generating is no longer even going to the grid. Now suddenly the coal power plant is needing to produce the energy that it was already producing for it, plus all the demand that's on it, plus now the demand that the nuclear had been producing but is no longer, so it's increased its energy production even higher. So then this one gets tripped off again to protect its equipment. But now these guys can't just crank back up. Now they're just producing energy not going anywhere, so they'll damage themselves, so they have to spool down instead of spooling up at the peak points when you're wanting more energy. So you see how it like does a negative spiral where you need more energy and then now you're getting less energy, because in order to protect these stable forms of energy production, they have to shut them off. It totally messes up the power grid, and then you get the rolling brownouts or blackouts. With all that to say, it's important to kind of understand the infrastructure. It's important not to demonize these ones, whatever your views are. If you like energy, if you really want to go green, and you're putting in solar panels, the only way that you're actually helping the grid, helping other people, helping yourself, is if you use battery energy storage. It doesn't have to be, though, a chemical battery. That's the only way that you're actually helping the grid. Same, I keep picking on solar, right? That's just because it's very predictable that it doesn't produce power when we want it to. Wind has a better and worse problem. Better in that it could be producing power when peak power demand is there, so that's the win. Worse is it's all more random. It's when the wind blows. So it could be even worse than when solar is, or non-existent, or producing lots of power. And as I've already said, producing lots of power when you don't need it is not beneficial to the system, same as not producing power when you do need it. So these both destabilize the grid, and that's the reason why when people say the grid's getting destabilized as we're adding green energy, that's how it's working, right? I can go into more detail with this, but that's it for today. Better Man Brief is going to be focusing on giving you little, topic starters. So I want to cover a broad range of different topics and give you a little bit of knowledge on each one, and then if you find a particular topic you're interested in, you can delve into that on your own. Like and subscribe for future videos.